Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And after a rather long absence, which it didn't quite occur to me until someone pointed it out, uh, that's the longest we've gone, Casen, without doing a show since we started doing the show.
Yeah.
It's past a month since our last show, so there's a lot we're here to catch up on. Uh, do you want to address the lack of volume in the room?
Well, I mean, it was kind of like we said it on our last show that I was going to be gone for a couple different things, and I knew that there would be at least a couple weeks, but then what I didn't plan for was at the tail end of my vacation, I ended up getting pretty sick, and so that added a couple more weeks onto what we thought. Which you can still hear it. My voice is not 100%, but we have been we've talked a couple times
We have.
in the absence, and so we've been itching to get back on the air, and so we were like, we'll just do it. We'll see what I can do because we have a lot of stuff to talk about.
We
The,
even
we I mean, we missed the entire finals for the NBA and NHL.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have a lot to talk about.
We missed all that time, and that's actually where we're going to begin. And then Casen put together actually the lineup this week, of which he usually always contributes to a lineup that I put together. But he put together a little thing in the middle we're going to do called the Fast Five, which is not only the sharing title of what, in my opinion, is the best Fast and Furious movie ever made, but also a kind of newish segment where we're going to try to touch on like a good five things, major things that happened in our absence that we want to talk about. Um,
And
you,
I mean,
you, you
a
said in
little.
you said in PTI style, we're not actually going to time that, right?
No, no, no. I
Okay.
mean, the thought process behind it was it's kind of like a short six pack, but you knew these ahead of time
Right.
because I wanted to. We're gonna try and limit how much I'm talking.
Yes,
So I tried to have you have the stories ahead of time so you can contribute to the conversation
for sure. And
a
I
bit
and, and
more.
I'll
So
and I I'll do most of the heavy lifting today. You might even have a little bit of a few cuts in the show today, if case, and if you want to make some editing choices as far as where your voices can go a little and can't. Keep in mind, and our friends and family know that I had a very similar thing happen to me. I got a really bad cold that shot my voice for like 2 weeks. So a very similar thing already happened to us in 2024, where we kind of had a scheduled ish absence and then a sickness just took one of our voices out. So we will go as well as we can, and we're going to close our show with catching up on the Acolyte, the current ongoing Star Wars series. That if you're anything like me in the feeds that I get through my subscriptions on YouTube and other places, has been an incredibly polarizing series, and we absolutely have takes on it. And it was one of those situations where I wasn't watching it until I realized, you know what, I have to watch it because we have to talk about this on our show, especially with our tumultuous opinions on where Star Wars is. And let's just be real, Kason and I have disagreed on a lot of Star Wars stuff since we've had this show in a good way. And as I say, Kason, the more stuff we disagree on, the better this show is. So
yeah.
has the potential of being. So because we usually agree on different reasons. So let's get into it. We're going to get into the NBA Finals because I think that there's way more to say about the Stanley Cup Finals. Uh, just a quick recap: Boston Celtics won it, their 18th championship, 4 games to 1. It was a gentleman's sweep, like in the truest of true fashions. Definitely not something either of us saw coming. I even said I thought the Mavs were going to win in 7, and I think you also said the Mavs were going to win, Kason. I don't know in how many.
Yeah, I thought that the Celtics definitely showed some like cracks and stuff without Porzingis, but then Porzingis came back, and
Right.
I think the Mavs just were not prepared for that. The
They
Mavs the Mavs had not been there. The Celtics had. The Celtics have kind of a lot more playoff experience than Luca and stuff. And also, to be fair, it's not understated that I think for a lot of people in that locker room in Boston, there was a revenge element against Kyrie.
there
I mean,
was.
there were a lot of people that I think were very upset still to this day about how the whole Kyrie situation went down, and
That's a
it, and
really
it
good
it
point.
played out.
because it seemed like from an organizational level down, everyone was like, okay, we are not letting Kyrie beat us in the finals. Not with the way everything went down, and I thought it would be quite the storyline to have. I thought it would take all 7 games if the Mavs were to win it, but I think also there was aside from the Kyrie situation, that rivalry rather, you had this idea of the Celtics, and we had even talked about it. The Celtics had won each of their previous series essentially without the team superstar being 100% the entirety of the series. And I think there was this idea of, well, they get a fully healthy Mavs team. There's no way they're going to be able to do this. But yeah, I didn't expect Porzingis to come in and just take over the first 2 games. The first game especially, which really was the Kristaps Porzingis show. I mean, that was one of the funnest performances I've ever seen in like a championship final ever. I mean, he just every single play seemingly went through him, and it was like the Celtics trying out their brand new toy that they had during the season. But it's like, oh, he's finally back. All of those things we had, we can do them now, and they did all of them on every offensive possession. That was definitely for me like. In a lot of ways, it turned out that game really set the tone for the whole series. Like the Mavs were never really in it. It was one of those things where when like they get a burst in game 4 to get through, which really felt like a gentleman sweep series at that point. Because I thought, I don't know where this has been, but the Mavs are giving everything they possibly can, and as are kind of the fans. And the Celtics kind of know that they can get home and win it. And when they won game 5 essentially with ease, in what really felt like from the opening tip was just a party from start to finish, it just kind of felt like, yeah, this season's over. Um, I also want to go on record and say I have no issue with the Celtics. I've never really had a reason to dislike them, even in my years being a kind of a pseudo Lakers fan at times. I never had anything wrong with the Celtics, and I actually jokingly have told people because of my birthday being on St. Patrick's Day and loving the color green and everything. If the Celtics weren't a Boston team, there's probably a really good chance that I would have become a fan of them as a young kid just because of their sheer look. Regardless, my take. It's been a while now. My takeaways are Boston was the best team all year. They were the best team in the playoffs, and they won a pretty uneventful finals after what I thought was still a very fun NBA playoff season. I mean, I think the last several playoffs have been great for the NBA because it feels like in a lot of ways parity is here, at least for the time being, especially as we're kind of like between eras, and we talked about that. You may agree or disagree, but I still felt like it was a strong year for the NBA playoffs, if not the finals.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that if we're talking about the future of the league in like in sort of like a post LeBron era where it's kind of like maybe even post LeBron and KD, where it's just kind of like the league's trying to find younger stars.
Post Steph too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was probably the best outcome for the league because you have, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum who have been grinding and they have been, in and out of like playoff loss and playoff turmoil for a long time. And so, I mean, I as a Cavs fan, I hate Boston, but I at least understand the story and like they have experienced a lot of heartbreak in the playoffs. And so on like a personal level, I mean it's good for those guys to finally be able to win.
Yeah.
I mean, because they've been putting in the work for what, like 6 years, like six,
Really,
7 years.
I mean,
So yeah,
I don't know how long
I
Stevens has been like the GM over there, but it feels like it's been since he got that job. Like it's been a
well,
long
it
time,
was.
the
I
building
think
process.
I think Tatum was 16. Yeah, so I somewhere on the last like 7 8 years, there's been a lot of trying and failing in the playoffs with Boston. With Stevens as the coach, and then I think it was 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, when he stepped into the front office. Um,
Yeah,
and so
from the
yeah, I
coaching.
mean
Yeah,
it's a good story for the league that they were finally able to get over the hump because they need another title. It's been a long time since the
well,
city of Boston's had a parade. So
right.
uh,
If you're going Boston overall is one thing, but if you're going by, yeah, of course, the Celtics and or Lakers won another championship, who collectively together have won over half of all of them ever won. So I mean, yeah, the rich get richer in that regard. I will say, I'm with you as far. I mean, I'm not a Boston fan for various reasons. The only beef in Boston of a team I don't have with is the Celtics, and it's only because Pittsburgh doesn't have an NBA team, where I'd probably be right there with you as far as having had run-ins with them in the past. Regardless, I did want to kind of get away a little bit from basketball and talk about like just the moment. One moment I thought was iconic and awesome because I watched it happen live. The moment where Tatum is celebrating and then his son came up to him and then he realized that it was his son and then he lifted him up in the confetti. Uh, it was one of those situations where as a sports fan when you watch it, you're like, that's the shot right there. Like that is the camera angle. Like there's all what whether it's LeBron hugging like JR in tears, or whether it's like Kobe up on the up on the scores table, or with the trophy in hand, or obviously Kevin Garnett's anything is possible, which Tatum literally did his version of, and you could tell that's immediately what he was doing. Um, but at the same time, sometimes you just kind of see something as a sports fan, and it's iconic. One other thing I'll say, and it's been a little while since since that actual night happened. There was more confetti in that celebration than I think any I've ever seen in all of sports. Like the confetti was like water. I don't know who was in charge of that, but but it's clear. I said to somebody, it's clear whoever was in charge of saying bring down the green and white confetti, whatever the like regular normal amount is for like a lot of it, let's like quadruple that, because I thought it was ridiculous. Go look at the picture. Like there was like a layer of it on everybody to the point where it really was like you put like something up there and blanketed the entire audience. Like it was insane to me how much confetti there was. So yeah, Boston, they just went crazy with that. Yeah, to the point where it was like cartoonish in every single image. I just loved that. I was like, someone just didn't care. They just said, let's just put all the confetti. Let's
Yeah.
let's save all the confetti that we've been stocking up each season for the last like 7 you just talked about, where we definitely thought we were going to win the championship and we didn't. Let's just get all that and drop it all tonight. That's what they were doing. Anyway, want to move on to the Stanley Cup Finals, which also completely happened in our time. And I will say that for the first half of the first like several games, it looked like it was going to go the way of the NBA Finals before, let's just be real, one of, if my in my opinion, the greatest Stanley Cup Finals ever emerged. I'm serious. I really believe you seem to be rolling your eyes. It was awesome. Like
Well,
it
so
was incredible.
the
Let-
let's back up here and
no,
first say,
let me. What are you gonna get? What are you gonna say?
well, I'll just say the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals, I think were, obviously the super cool connection there between Tatum and Matthew Kachuk, the like being friends in like middle school,
In St.
and
Louis,
then and winning championships in the same month.
within the same month, it looked like it was going to be within days of each other.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, there's an image of them on the school bus together, which those two guys should totally somehow meet up and recreate.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
100%.
sure that's been
With the
said to both
trophies.
with the trophy, like
Yeah.
the image that that was sent across the internet of like that was made clearly in graphic form. I'm like, you guys honestly should do that. You should try to find like get on a random bus somewhere and recreate that picture, because what are the odds of that? I mean, truly, that is really an amazing, especially two sports whose arcs and actual who could not be more different from each other than the time of year that they take place, right?
Mhm.
And just the pathway by which you get there, and just the fact that they were like they're essentially the same age, finally win a title in the same season, two completely different sports. I don't know. I find stuff like that to be just incredible. But also we also say small world a lot, right? There's some small world things that happened to me in my life
Yeah.
just in the last month that I couldn't believe happened because I got a chance to go home to Pittsburgh and see some friends and stuff. So anyway,
Yeah. Well, so with that being said, obviously,
that being
the
said, real
the
quick,
Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup.
they did,
The
after getting absolutely steamrolled by your boys a year ago in the finals.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, and try another situation where a team has been trying and trying and trying with the same core. But just to run through it, Panthers won games 1, 2, and 3. Looked like it was going to be over. The Oilers had a show out in game 4, a game I still can't believe, where they blasted Bobrovsky out of the game. 8-1 was your final. And I remember having a feeling that evening. I said, it's in the way that they won here tonight that makes me think, could the Oilers have a bit more in the tank that they've now figured out? It's not just that they won, it's that they blasted the goaltender out by early in the second period, and it was like 5-0. And it's like, okay, the Oilers are having like an explosion here. And it was such an evening that it's one where you build your confidence off of. And especially with the legacy on the line, not just McDavid, but Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins and all those guys. And I was right, because the Oilers then win the next 2 to force a game 7. And a game 7, I think most people thought they were going to win, especially considering the previous 3 going back to the 2009 Penguins. Shout out. Game 7s that made it to the game 7s that occurred in the Stanley Cup final rather ended with the road team winning. And I thought another one was going to happen. And in what was a really, really good and defensive game, the Panthers pulled it off at home, 2-1. And that was your Stanley Cup final in a nutshell. Took the full 2 weeks. Again, it's been there was a lot of firsts. There was a lot of things that hadn't happened in the finals in a long time, which is why I said what I said.
And the biggest takeaway, which I think, is probably a bit of a controversial thing. Connor McDavid won the Conn Smythe.
He did.
Which not very common for the losing team.
And it is an award. And it is an award for the entire playoffs. Okay. I think a lot of people do forget that, because each of the years the Penguins won the cup, it was won by someone who I really didn't necessarily see immediately, but that's because their immediate impact may not be on your forefront right there. It was like in 2009, Evgeny Malkin won it. And then Sid wins it the next in 16-17. It's like, well, yeah, if you go by the whole playoffs, who are they here because of? Connor McDavid. And I think the controversy comes in to where, did the NHL do that as a legacy moment to acknowledge, in other words, did they make that decision for the right reasons? I really think that that's the question. It's like, okay, are they trying to give McDavid a moment here because they weren't really expecting the Florida Panthers and they kind of want to acknowledge this incredible comeback that fell short? Or are they doing this not necessarily to smite the Panthers, but it felt more like, I think, to the fans, like this is an NHL Golden Boy moment that he shouldn't necessarily have won because they didn't win the Stanley Cup. Thoughts on that? Because I think that's where the controversy comes in. Personally, I had no issue with it. I actually thought it was awesome. I thought it was incredible that he did that.
The dude had 42 points in the playoffs.
Yeah,
obviously, it's not unwarranted, and I think it's clearly deserving. So I think it's just weird because you don't normally see that a lot. And
no, but it's historic.
I mean,
it was one more thing on an already historic finals,
I mean, and to be fair, they were a goal away from, coming back from down 3-0 to winning. So I think it encapsulates the finals as a whole, because it was such a kind of back and forth sort of, like Panthers won 3 games, Oilers won 3 games, and then game 7 was pretty tight. I mean, it was a 2-1, and it was relatively close. And so I think it's pretty representative of the whole back and forth nature of that series. And and I think Connor McDavid, as the player he is in the regular season, as he's been his entire career, the first time he made it to the finals, he racked up 42 points. I mean, you can't deny and say he wasn't the best player in the playoffs.
That's, you kind of answered my next question, because I was going to say, what does this do to the legacy of McDavid? I think already this mythologizes him. I will say that he is not a player that I think will go titleless. I really I actually would be more terrified of this Oilers team coming back next year than say this Florida Panthers team, because what like there's nothing that cools that fire like winning. Um, in the NHL,
Yeah.
dynasty,
We saw it with Vegas. Like
right?
Vegas won and they definitely didn't have a great year this year.
They still, I mean,
So
they were going to be a playoff team, but they flamed out pretty quickly. I will say that, and it's harder to make that happen in the Stanley Cup Finals. It's so much harder in the NHL, and I don't know. This is like a finals. I'm never gonna forget this because of what it sets the Oilers up for. Because if Lord forbid that they don't make it back here and win it sometime in this time, this is the finals that is going to define this era for McDavid and them. And I don't think that's fair. I keep thinking to myself, man, they're the team now that's like they were this close. And we just spent, a good first part of the show talking about the build and getting up there and going a little bit further, a little bit further. The Oilers have also been that the whole time McDavid's been there with essentially the same core around him. And to fall this short, but he still gets the Conn Smythe, which I'm sure he does not care about that at all. Uh, it's like, okay, so are they the team that's going to take the next step next year? Because they with what they showed, especially in this finals and really over the course of the playoffs, they're definitely going to be one of my favorites to win it next year.
yeah, I don't know for sure their roster situation
I don't either,
going in,
admittedly.
but it's hard to keep a nucleus together, especially one that's been together.
It is.
So I'm not sure who's up, as a free agent or not, but we'll just have to keep an eye on that and see what the team looks like going into next year. But
Yep.
yeah, they definitely probably they finally crossed the hump of like having some success in the playoffs, which is they consistently haven't made it or they got bounced immediately. And so now that they finally have been able to string some series together and get there, we'll see what happens.
I will also
That's like what happened with Boston and the Panthers. You get there and then you know how to get there and then you can win it.
Yep. I do want to just kind of briefly touch on Sergei Bobrovsky because it's really interesting to the career he's had. Just being the guy there, right, in your neck of the woods for the Blue Jackets for the longest time, and then what looked like was going to be another monumental collapse in the playoffs, the biggest one ever. But no, that didn't happen. He's a Stanley Cup champion now at 35 years old. And it's just interesting with these players like himself that goes to a place like Florida and has essentially an entire second quote unquote life, an entire second half of your career. And that's really what you're more known for, so to speak. It's
Yeah,
yeah,
look,
he's one of those
they
guys now.
they gave him an awful contract. And there were some other people too that the Panthers have been a little, I would say, careless about their money situation with, but whatever. It worked out. They won. They, they're the Panthers, and they managed to win a Stanley Cup.
They're the
Um, I mean,
so,
it is what it is,
the Sunrise, Florida, man. The Florida teams like man, we can't catch a break out here. What do you mean? No, but them especially. They were this. I don't know. This would be if, say, the Coyotes still existed. This would be like if the Coyotes won the Stanley Cup like 4 or 5 years from now. It would be like, really, this team? Like, that's probably incredibly insulting to what I just said to any Yotes fans that are still out there. But
wait, well, we'll get into that.
that's on the Fast Five list, of which I am fully ready to get into. If you have anything, don't want to say anything more.
No, yeah, I'll just say, yeah, the only thing I'll have is, yeah, interesting way for the season to end, pretty dramatic. All the headlines with that series, and we'll see what happens next year.
It was a fun month, because fun month, man. By the time this show goes out, it's going to be July since we're doing this on Sunday, right before July starts. So, it was a fun month. It was, and it's interesting because if you're sports fans like us, there's parts of the sports calendar that you always love. June to me is a little underrated too, just because you get you get the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals, which typically in most given years, I care more about the Stanley Cup Finals just in general, happening at the same time. But also, like, the other sports are kind of coming to an end. I guess shout out Tennessee baseball too, because and Oklahoma softball, because those college World Series are happening at the same time as well. So I don't know. It's just and especially in my line of work with what I do, it's a pretty chill month as well after the school year finally, closes out in May. So um yeah, it was fun. Uh
I j-
yeah,
a bit of an audible here,
sure.
just because I do want to bring this up.
Yes.
So, like, because you brought up Tennessee and stuff, and so they brought up the College World Series.
Yes.
The again, I an early, I'll just say, um, little brother of the week goes to Texas A&M for losing their baseball coach to Texas.
Well, let me also address, we weren't going to do of the weeks this week, which we're
No,
formally not. We might sprinkle them in there, but I know what you're referring to. If you don't know, Texas A&M's baseball coach, like, less than 12 hours after saying I took this as a forever job, committed to going to Texas. Listen, I will say this, that is a massive rivalry within that state. So there's like no school he could have gone to that would have caused those fans as much pain as he did by going to Texas, like Texas from Texas A&M. Um, it almost like so I totally understand why fans are going to take that personally, but the reality of the situation is I swear they think it's like a football type thing. It's like, I'm sorry, that's still probably a better job. So I mean, I don't
well, I mean,
I mean,
we one of our last shows, or it we talked about, the with the landscape, like the rich schools are gonna matter more,
yeah,
and and
that's a good
you
callback, man.
and Texas being an SEC school now, this guy can go to Austin with the Texas with the Longhorn money
Absolutely.
and still play SEC and still coach SEC baseball. Like
Absolutely.
that matters.
That
That
that's
matters.
a right. And the reality is that's the first domino of exactly what you and I were talking about. It's like, yes, I can take coaches like yours now. You know what I mean?
And
Uh,
so, like, here's the thing: like Texas A&M, they left to go to the SEC 10 years ago or 12 years ago, whatever, and they have been getting beaten up the entire time, and
Johnny
just
Football. That was it.
and like their worst nightmares came true. Is Big Brother UT Austin? We're like, all right, we'll come and join you finally,
Yeah.
and then now they're losing all their coaches, all their players. Like the only thing they had over us over Texas was they were in the SEC,
Oh, and
and
by
so
the
now
way,
that
now we're gonna play a lot more.
yeah, exactly. So
So
now
hey, you
if
get
I'm Texas A&M, I just go back to the Big 12 and say, all right, this
all
whole
right,
thing was a
yeah,
mistake. Let's just
yeah.
get out of
Like, it's like,
here.
hey, you get your rivalry back that we're gonna win most of the time. Anyway, let's get into the Fast Five. First on the list here, I have to remember what you said because there was a lot of stuff there. I was like, oh yeah, that happened. Oh yeah, that happened too. You
Yeah,
have
so
you
so
go
so
ahead.
this is going to be basically just some headlines. Some of it's a couple weeks old, just some headlines of stuff that we missed that I
Yep.
thought would be kind of fun to talk about a little bit. Um, the the first thing I had on the list was came out, I think it was last week, or earlier this week. The NFL Sunday Ticket lawsuit. If you didn't hear about it, the NFL, it was kind of like under wraps for a while until toward the end of the trial when people started talking about it. But the NFL was being sued in like a class action lawsuit, the NFL and DirecTV, for basically conspiring to hike up the price of the Sunday Ticket package, and which there was a lot of stuff that came out of the trial, which basically confirmed yes. I mean, because it came out that during the negotiations to redo the Sunday Ticket package, ESPN offered a significantly decreased price, the option for single teams, which is what everybody's been clamoring for, and then the NFL basically said no, and so there was a lot of pretty bad stuff to come out for the NFL, which is why after some deliberations, the jury ended up coming back and finding that they were guilty of whatever, you know, conspiracy for price hikes or whatever that they were,
Yeah.
and antitrust laws that they violated. And so they ended up being uh assessed with potentially upwards of $14 billion in damages that would be dispersed between
And
commercial and residential
right.
um parties of this action, which would be bars and restaurants and homeowners and customers that bought it with their
Right.
DirecTV
And I
package.
want to point out, just to interject, they're liable for potentially $14.39 billion. They absolutely are on the hook for 4.7 billion already. The jury
Yeah,
did award that. That was the big news that came out last week. You know, I listened to several outlets discuss this story over the course of this last week or so, because it is noteworthy that the actual lawsuit was filed like 7 or 8 years ago. Like
yeah,
this has been in litigation for a long time. And one of those, like, that's the thing about the court system when it moves so slowly, just with the things that have to happen in order for the process to take place. The landscape of media that was that when that is different now than it was 7, 8 years ago when
mhm,
this was filed. Like they're essentially trying to essentially litigate from a mix between how things were then and also what practices might still be happening now. Because the real controversy comes in is that is the NFL trying to jack the price up so that not too many people get NFL Sunday Ticket, so to keep their networks happy? Because it's obviously CBS, Fox,
yeah,
NBC. That's what it is here. It's like the NFL's trying to find that sweet spot of at least was trying to find that sweet spot between how do we get X amount of NFL Sunday, like what can we get away with to get these people to still get the NFL Sunday Ticket without too many of them getting it, and making our big network friends
right,
very
right,
very
exactly. And
unhappy with
that
us.
that pretty much is what kind
This
of
is
came
about.
out as confirmed. Pretty much was that the conspiracy was that they hiked up the price. It was on DirecTV,
Yes.
so that like you had to have DirecTV to see it. And um so that if you didn't have it, you couldn't watch your Browns or Steelers game. You had to watch the 425 America's Game of the Week or
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
which was, Cowboys versus whoever. Like
Whatever your
it,
regional coverage game
yeah,
was.
whatever was on the network, because the networks aren't paying, $10 billion for you to not watch their game
Right.
because the Browns are on. Like,
In my, I'll just jokingly say, yeah, in my neck of the woods, that means it's like 90% an NFC South game. So,
yeah,
that's like annoying. But in all seriousness, so getting that's the meat of it. What do you think the outcome of this is going to be? Because
so
I really think the NFL is going to be on the hook to say, okay, they're going to have to find a meaning. The antitrust laws are going to say you can't do this, essentially.
yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of people thinking that this is going to go to the Supreme Court for appeal it all the way up, because they're not.
I
I
absolutely
mean,
think it could because of
yeah,
the implications on it. I really think
yeah,
that could happen.
and
Yes.
so, but like, I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, we'll see how that works. We'll see what happens with that. But if all of this stuff holds up and everything stays the same and they're on this hook, they're gonna have to change. Like this is specifically about the DirecTV contract. So this has nothing to do with the way that there are with YouTube TV right now. However, if they don't change, they're going to be sued again by
Absolutely.
anybody with their YouTube TV, with me included. And so what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to change it. And so potentially, I mean, if they are unable to get this to go away, they're going to have to lower the price. They're probably going to have to start offering single team packages. And then the result of that is probably the networks offering less money in their media rights contract,
Listen,
because
yeah.
if they're not able to guarantee that people are watching their network, the value is lower, which just means that the money is going to be less all around.
Right.
However, for
Yeah.
the league itself, that might mean a little less, because, or that might, the effect of that might not be quite so bad, because more people might be willing to buy Sunday Ticket if it's $75, $100, as opposed to 400.
Right. Or even or even pay $50 to watch your team this one week and do it on a weekly basis. Because I can say right now, in my lifetime, and other teams could get to be this way, the Steelers usually play, the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is my favorite NFL team, play on prime time maybe 5, 6 times a year. That's a lot
Yeah.
of the season. Okay. A lot of those times there's random weeks where I can just play, where I can just watch them. A lot of the divisional games are already big games. So a lot of the times those are either prime time or they're just a regional game that I can get. They have a lot of fans. There's always, though, that one odd week. And this happened back when we were at BG, when I was in the Browns market, where I
Mhm.
just couldn't watch them. And it was like, okay, I won't watch them. And a lot of those weeks I could just listen to the game. You know what I mean? I would listen to Bill Hillgrove on
Yeah.
WDBE, which for me is fine because it was always just some random game. It was like, okay, they're playing at 1 o'clock against like the Raiders at home. It's like, okay, whatever. That's a game where I could say, like, if I had nothing going on, if I could pay like a certain amount of money to just get access to that game and watch it, I probably would have, and it's because it's not happening that many times a year. I just giving an example. To pull it back, why I think this could definitely go to the Supreme Court is because this is the so many things in network and TV follow by what the NFL does, and it's not just sports. Like a lot of things, a lot of that money is dictated throughout the year for various things, and we are at such a crossroads right now as far as what is going to happen with streaming that I think the outcome of this is going to be something monumental. Like we're talking CBS and Fox and them really significantly losing power and losing things because so many things are moving to streaming, including the cash cow that is the NFL. Um, that's really all I wanted to say about that. You got any more you want to rebuttal to that? And I'll let you dictate when we move on.
No, I mean, yeah, the the ability, like the option of streaming opens the world for so many different functionalities and options for you to just, like you said, go in and just pay per game if like your team has 1 or 2 games a year out of market, if playing on the opposite coast or whatever, and you're just like, I just want to see these 2 games because I can get the rest of them. And that is there's a path for that, but we'll have to see how I mean, we'll have to see
To
how that
get there, it's
works.
going to be kicking and
Yeah,
screaming the whole
yeah,
way, big time.
yeah,
Ready to move on?
yeah.
Staying in the NFL, Hard Knocks. That's another piece that's come out. We've talked on and off about Hard Knocks on this show before, usually about the team in question. If you're not familiar, Hard Knocks comes on HBO, behind the scenes, docudrama storytelling, essentially docu-series behind the scenes in the NFL. They for the longest time, Hard Knocks always did a preseason one. A couple years ago, they started doing an in-season one as well, so you get 2 seasons of it in the same year on HBO. For the first time ever, they announced that they're going to do a full division and follow 4 teams in a division during the NFL season for the in-season one, and it's the AFC North. Casen, it's like this was tailor made for us when the time
Yeah.
comes. Oh man, like I literally for us and like some people we bring on as guests to potentially come in and talk about this show. Let me just say I've never gotten HBO or for Hard Knocks. I've never really been like a Hard Knocks guy. And I am on record saying the only thing that would ever get me to actually watch Hard Knocks is if the Steelers were ever on it. This is like triply more interesting to me because of just the history of the AFC North, the fact that it's probably the nastiest division in the NFL. The only other one I can think of is quite up there in terms of hatred is probably the NFC North. The oldest teams in the league are in those 2 divisions, really,
Mhm.
and are woven within the fabric of the history of the sport. All 8 of those teams. And I'm thinking if this is a success, I could see them doing that division next year and just going around the league for next few years. But
I mean,
yeah,
along with the fact that there's so many headlines within that division.
so many headlines within the division, but also the time of year. That's why I liked the title cards for all of those were in the snow. I thought to myself,
Mhm.
that is a fascinating time of year to dive into the AFC North and see what's going on. And you were the one who said it's going to be wild when the Cincinnati Bengals head coach uh gets fired on the show. I'm like, and I was like, I mean, that could happen. I mean, that's you calling your shot. Like that could really happen. Like that's just a fascinating. I'm excited mainly to see the dirt on all of your teams. Um, just
Yeah.
because, and I'm just going to be blunt here. the best run organizations in our division are the Steelers and Ravens. So I cannot wait to see what's going on with the Browns and Bengals in season. I'm going to be sitting there with popcorn, being like, "All right," and then I'm going to see some sort of Steelers dysfunction, of which that's clearly there too. And it's like, ah, man,
Yeah, because the last Browns Hard Knocks was real great PR for the
oh,
franchise.
it,
Um,
I mean, but also you got Steelers with two new QBs in the building. There could be controversy there. Lack of
yeah,
offense. You got Pickens, who's been unhappy. So I mean, there's a high potential there for PR to go badly as well, which is why I will say that none of those teams, except for the Browns, no, I'm not really counting that. The Steelers never struck me as a team. The Steelers will go to the grave not being on Hard Knocks. It would take the whole division for them to agree to this.
mhm.
I really think it was going to take, okay, so us and our division are all going to have to deal with the same thing at the same time. So there's a level of fairness that was probably sold to them from HBO saying, what if we do this? And it's like, okay,
Well, it was probably marketed to them as like you all will have it, so your coverage will be less intrusive
true.
because we're not gonna need, you know, a full season of footage out of just you. Like we'll just need some highlight like top layer stuff from all four, and then we'll, kind of
Got it
intermingle it that
together.
way.
I
And
also
so
imagine for each
we'll
episode,
see.
we'll see all four teams, something from all four.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would guess that's how it'll be. Is they'll
Yeah.
be like cutting back and forth from place to place, but because like everything that I've heard from players and coaches and staff is that like when Hard Knocks comes in, it like just derails your training camp. It derails
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of everything because it's so annoying, so intrusive, which again begs the question of like why does the league force teams to do this? Because like it like literally hinders the product. Like
Well,
it
and that's, and see, that's the thing. I love those. That's like my favorite thing to watch right now on streaming service. I love like drama series like that where it's not really reality TV, but like you're seeing the process. You really feel like you're seeing on the inside. One of my favorite show on TV of any kind right now is Welcome to Wrexham. It's incredible.
mhm.
You're seeing the raw process, and they are showing that it is possible to win, even if you have your struggles, even with that around. Now, all those players wouldn't know a time where that wasn't happening. You know what I mean? If there's cameras around all the time, it becomes the norm. There's also the argument to be made when quarterback had its first season. Mahomes
Yeah.
literally won the Super Bowl during that season. So, as intrusive as that was to his life, he showed that he's great enough to make it happen. So, that's my comeback to that. It's like basically, you're one of our 32 teams, deal with it kind of thing. However, I think this is also the NFL and HBO recognizing what if we pull back the coverage and go a whole division with four teams rather than like
Mhm.
I think this is actually a really good compromise party solution that was at the round table someone suggested and was like, I could get on board. And the teams were like, yeah, we could get on board with that too. Even if
Yeah.
the players
Yeah.
all really don't like it, like everything you just said, I really look at this as, well, hey, here's a compromise that'll also be interesting to all of our fans. So
Yeah. I mean,
I think this is progress, but you know,
I do too. I mean, I think it's a really cool idea. I'm really intrigued to see kind of how it'll work.
yeah.
Um, and how they're gonna sort of interweave the storylines and stuff. Um, I mean, especially because this season in the later half of the year, it's just all interdivisional games, and it's just like because of sort of how tight that division is going to be.
The sheer
Wouldn't it suck if like if like one team is like 1-7 and then
oh
it's just like they're just completely irrelevant to the show?
well, I hope that doesn't happen. I think the odds of that happening are low because of how the AFC North has been. That being said, the Steelers have like the most ridiculous post Thanksgiving schedule in the league, and like the Chiefs are in there. It's like all of you guys five
Yeah.
times. They're just for the heck of it, they're giving us three games against you guys instead of the normal two. So it's like, okay, well, let's just jam it. Let's just jam in everything with the Steelers we possibly can because people love them. I will also say that two of the biggest fan bases in the NFL are ours, yours and mine. So
Yeah.
and the other two also have a massive amount of fans. So all over the country, world really. So we will I'm excited for it. I really am excited for it. I will not be excited if like, yeah, if like the Steelers are winless and it's like, well, great. Now I get to, watch my team become a laughing stock. I don't want that to happen to any team except the Ravens.
Agreed.
Yeah, there we go. We might have to find a Baltimore fan to come in and give a few takes. Like if that happens, I might have to brainstorm some ideas. I have some ideas, but are we moving on?
Yeah, we can go ahead and move on. Keeping again in the NFL, this is a couple weeks old of a story,
Not as much to say on this one. Go ahead.
but I just wanted to bring it up because we've talked about this ad nauseum last season, and again we're back with the same headlines. So the teams had mandatory mini camp a couple weeks ago, and shocker, surprise, Aaron Rodgers was not at mini camp. He
Speaking
held
of
out.
Hard Knocks, right?
Yeah,
A
yeah.
year ago.
He was nowhere to be seen, and all Robert Saleh could say was he has a reason, or he thought the reason was important. Do we even have we even found out where he was?
It
I don't think we even know yet.
we have sent various TikToks and jokes to our friends about where he was. That none of that's really been confirmed, right? Um,
I think I saw something that he was like in the Middle East, but I don't know if that was true. I
I
have no idea.
I haven't seen anything from an actual credible source that confirmed where he was. I honestly think it might have just been a personal thing, but like it's easy to make the jokes of like he was on another Vision quest, right? Or
But
like
the headline is that it was not excused. It's not like he was
no,
sick or had like a matter to attend to. He
yeah,
just thought something else was more
he
important
he had
than
something
minicamp.
he had something in his personal life that interfered directly with his work schedule that he outright chose to skip work for unexcused and go to is the way like
Yeah.
everyone is reporting this, whatever it was. Okay, and it wasn't one of those like something came up, like it was something that was already predestined. He wasn't going to be there. And really this is just one of those things of, we made jokes on this show a year ago that like, or whenever it was, more than a year ago or whatever it was, when Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets, I remember saying something to you of, we knew he was like, they're going to bend over backwards and let him do whatever he wants, even more so than Russell Wilson, say, with like Denver when he went. And it's kind of funny that within a year, like, yes, that is what is happening here. He can just come and go
Yeah. I mean,
at
it's
will.
like
Oh, we have a game
it's like,
today. I don't really feel like playing. Like
yeah.
I want to go
Oh,
run for vice pres. I want to go run for
gotta
vice president.
I
Like, well,
gotta
wait,
go to
you can't
the
wait.
gotta go to the rally for my friend
Yeah,
who's running
wait,
for president.
wait. It's a little late in the game. It's the middle of the season. What are we doing? Yeah, it's just wild. But I'm telling you this:
Agreed.
you talk about a guy who has had his kind of entire legacy. He's always been a strange person, and there's things we could get into that I'm not going to get into on this show. But uh, there's nothing that, like, say, the McAfee show and other places couldn't say about him. Um, I'm really glad he's not tied to my team. I'll just put it that way. Just because I'm really wondering what your commitment level is when you say one thing, get the money you have. I just think it shows where your priorities lie when you do stuff like this. And it shows to everyone, and you're not fooling anybody. That's really it. You're not fooling anyone. It's like
Yeah.
at some point the antics become more of it. And it just makes me wonder what he's going to be like in retirement. Like, I mean, because in my opinion, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but
Yeah.
like, so he's someone who's gonna have attention the rest of his life. It's just what's it gonna be on, Anyway,
Yeah. I mean,
that's all I have. Go ahead.
it's just like, yeah, definitely, like, if you haven't played more than like 5 minutes in a football game in 2 years, and you just skip town to skip practice, that the first chance you get after coming off an ACL or Achilles or whatever it was, the like, you're coming off an injury at 35 years old, you have a lot of team chemistry to build up because you basically derailed the entire season, and you acted like an idiot the entire time you were injured. And then, like, you just skip town, leave them high and dry. It I don't know. I mean, if I was like if I was like a Sauce or a Garrett Wilson or somebody who's depending on him to like do well, I'd be mad. I'd be mad.
Or
Like,
I'd be at least mad
like,
at the
dude,
organization. Like, what are we doing here? Like,
like, why are we paying this guy
yeah,
$45 million to not be here?
to literally skip. Like, it's yeah, I agree. I agree. Stick a pin in that because I don't think that's over by any means.
No.
That's a massive story going into the league year, I think. Um, Off of a little bit more of the chaos, you have next here. Before we get it back into a chaotic story potentially, Arizona Coyotes dead / Utah Hockey Club Yetis question mark.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want to say on this, so go ahead.
So I just to touch on, I mean, so the Utah Coyotes are no more.
Arizona
They were,
Coyotes.
or sorry, the Arizona
Yep,
Coyotes are no more. They were, bought. The franchise was bought by
we
the
talked
guy that
about it.
owns the Jazz. We talked about it.
They moved. Yep.
And then the name that they will be which we didn't get this part. So the updates on that story are the name they will be using for this upcoming year is the Utah Hockey Club, and then they've been putting out some polls for local fans for the future branding of the franchise. And
The
it's
jerseys are the colors that they have chosen. They have said that
yeah.
we're going to be these
So
colors. It's like
it's gonna
go look them up. They're cool. They're like black. It's like black with powder blue and white. They don't look like
yeah
any other team, which is cool. You know.
yeah they're kind of I think the blue is kind of like a Kraken blue, but it,
A
it
little
it
bit.
definitely feels Utah.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. It's like
and
mountains.
so
It's like mountains
yeah
inspired, kind
yeah,
of. You know.
and so they're
Yeah,
kind of like it sort of like the darker version of the Avalanche maybe.
I can see. Yeah, I can see
It kind
that.
of like the yeah.
It doesn't
So
look like they ripped anyone off though, and that was the big
no
thing.
no no
Like
no,
Vegas looked
no.
unique,
Yeah
Seattle looked unique, Utah looks unique. Like they don't look like anybody else.
yeah.
So
So
good job.
it's being hypothesized that the front runner is the Yetis for the future branding. So could be the Utah Yetis, but we'll see. We'll see. But the big headline here is that with the sale of the franchise, the previous owner of the Coyotes um was given the opportunity to uh build the arena he's been trying to build, and then the rights to another team in the future
To bring the Coyotes back,
to bring the Coyotes back.
which I am on record. I remember because I said this to you and friend of the show James was on. I am not convinced that the Yotes are coming back in any way, shape, or form.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
And so the sale of the land that he was waiting for to build his stadium on basically was canceled by the state. And the guy
Mm-hmm.
basically, after that happened, he said, well, okay, I'm done. I give up.
Oh, so
Like,
that's actually happened. It's over now.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
I missed
So
that. I
so
missed
he
that.
he tried to buy this land from the state. The state wouldn't sell it to him, and so he basically said, "Well, I don't know what to do then, so I give up."
Well,
And
I mean,
like
yeah,
essentially, he said, like I mean, I don't know for sure what exactly he said, but from everything I can find, like he basically was giving up on
and
bringing it back.
and listen, I'm a little bit in between on this because it's been well documented that it's not cool to shake down public money when these are billionaire owners to put stuff places. I think this is a really shades of gray story because you feel for for the fans, especially for an area and town, an area that never really seemed to want to help them out in terms of keeping the team there. However, I am one of those people that says, yeah, but if it's at the detriment of the greater good of the community, then we really should probably let it go. Like,
So
and I think that was a little bit of the controversy with Vegas for the longest time. Only now it's like worked out. I mean, when you're doing something that's really not going to help the community as a whole, I can't get mad at the politicians who sit there and say it makes no sense for us to pay this when we got all these other issues. You know, getting water out here, quite frankly, we are not going to spend X amount more money to put a sheet of ice in the desert when it's just not the return is just not great. And like
yeah.
I cannot sit here, even as a diehard sports fan, and say that that's not the right decision. You know, so that's just my take. Go ahead.
So um on the 24th, 3 days after the Arizona State Land Department canceled the auction for the land,
Mm.
uh, it was reported that the owner told staff members he had no plans to look for another option, leaving the future of the team uncertain. Less than a day later, he announced his intention to leave the ownership group, uh, and it's not clear if that's going to essentially dissolve the organization of the franchise,
Hmm.
and it's unclear if the rights to the brand would transfer with Utah or go to the Jets, who were
Interesting.
the
The
original,
Winnipeg Jets.
yeah.
Interesting. Hmm.
So
That's honestly something the lawyers got to figure out, like who actually owns these now, because those don't just go away. Like
because
someone owns those.
the original Winnipeg Jets moved to Phoenix, and so then the new Winnipeg Jets could it's so weird. I don't know.
They relinquished the rights when the Atlanta Thrashers went to Winnipeg and became the new Jets. Like they've like
Yeah.
that's happened a few times in the NHL where they've relinquished rights, so to speak, for the team. Um, and honestly, hockey franchises are way quicker to do that because the leagues had to make so many changes to survive over the years that it's like, look,
Yeah.
whatever it takes, stick a pin in that because I would be interested to know who legally owns the Yotes.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll happen. I
Yeah,
mean, my guess would be that it would go to Utah because it's technically that franchise.
right. And it would be
So that,
theirs to do
yeah,
with. It would be theirs to
yeah,
really to decide what to do because you can revert the rights back to the league. So,
yeah,
and that's happened in the NBA a few times. So,
yeah,
um, ready to move on?
yeah. I just,
Oh, real quick, I do want to say on a lighter note, I hope it's the Utah Yetis because back in college with a group, we did do a expansion team as part of a class. We did do an expansion team um, project where we had to come up with everything. We had to come up with the finances and everything like that. And ultimately, this what we my group chose at the time an expansion team in the NHL in Seattle, and we called them the Seattle Sasquatch. Now here we are, 8, 9 years later, the Seattle Kraken have happened with like a mythological creature name, which is pretty cool. I just think it would be awesome if it was the Yetis in Utah, and I think that rolls really well. Just awesome. Just makes sense.
yeah, mm, that'll be the day when the Utah Yetis come out in the like throwback, the Katsina jersey.
Oh, with the
Yeah.
desert looking coyote
Yeah.
with playing hockey. Yeah. One of the best logos in the history of American sports.
It'll be
No
like
question.
it'll be like the Hurricanes
Wearing the
wearing the
Whalers, it's
Whalers.
like, yep,
They're like,
we're just
do
twisting
it.
the knife. Oh, and by the way, Tennessee Titans, we're just gonna wear the Oilers. We're just gonna wear the Oilers
Oh my
uniforms because we
God.
can when we own them. Um, you have the last one here for Fast Five before we go into Acolyte. Uh,
Yeah.
JJ Redick has been hired as the head coach of the Lakers, and this is kind of a twofold because they also have since drafted Bronny.
Yeah.
That happened in the last couple, in the last
Yeah.
week and change. Um, I have my thoughts. You go with what you want to go with first.
So we've seen this before. I mean the Nets hired Steve Nash, that didn't work out. I mean JJ Redick, podcaster, like a month ago, no coaching experience. And then there was, I mean, he was going to do a podcast with LeBron. I mean, that was the whole thing. And then it was like, well, podcast canceled because now you're coaching LeBron. Um,
Can I also just say
yeah,
JJ Redick's a good podcaster. Old Man in the Three. I really do like that
yeah,
show. I don't listen to I because we podcast Casen as a hobby. I don't listen to any podcast like religiously, so to speak. I kind of pick and choose based on topics, and I want to hear from certain people. But Old Man of the Three is one of those shows that I listen to segments from when they interview certain people, just because I feel like I learn more about basketball and a sport that I didn't know as much about until recent years, just in terms of especially the pro game.
mhm,
Um, it doesn't need to be said that everyone is, I mean, this is such a Lakers move. I understand a lot of people saying in the last few weeks that it's like you can't take the Lakers seriously anymore. I look at this as just sort of this is a Lakers move. Like because they look at this less in terms of championship building and more like how do we maintain the brand? Like what's the biggest thing they have going for them right now? They have LeBron still. That that's really it. And he's the one thing and LeBron's still LeBron in the sense of as long as we have him, we will continue to be a perennial playoff team. You can potentially make a run. We'll still be a headline money generating team if we just need someone to manage the house, so to speak, for a while, why not JJ Redick? I mean, and to be fair, they tried to get Hurley, and that wasn't happening. They tried to, you know, expand it to a basketball direction, and Dan Hurley wouldn't go. And so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, it was a meme until it wasn't, and it became a not a meme really quick. It was like JJ Redick, okay, all right, sure. And I think partially it's because no one wants that job. I do think it's sort of like one of those.
Yeah.
LeBron's now stayed there long enough to where he's really the pariah. He's the one pseudo kind of running the team. I think it's kind of obvious. And when you have really kind of passive ownership out there with just like the bus kids, it's sort of like this is fine to them. You know what I mean? Let's just try to go and maintain the status quo. Meanwhile, your arch rival in the league did just grind their way to a championship, and you're still focused on life with LeBron. But this just feels like the end of Kobe again, right? Like, do you agree? They're not really that great. They're piddling away. Yeah. They have one of the greatest ever on the team still, and a bunch of whoever's with them. LeBron has said literally yesterday, Saturday, that he'd be willing to restructure to get like another player in there. But this feels like the same old Lakers. It really does.
It's like kind of the same timeline. I mean,
yeah,
like the last the last title, where they went 2009, I think was the last title Kobe won.
The last one Kobe won, yes, and then they won the one in the bubble.
So that's what I'm saying. So the Kobe one, like, so this is like 2014,
right?
Like,
right from gotcha, yeah. I get what
you
mean.
And so it's just kind of like anything he wants is done. He wants his podcast buddy to be the coach. Okay, JJ's hired. Okay, he wants his son on the team. Okay, Bronny's drafted.
Yeah.
Like, how is JJ supposed to coach LeBron and his son at the LeBron's the coach? Like,
he's not gonna. Like, that's the thing. Yeah.
LeBron is the coach. JJ's just there to call timeouts,
to hang out, like, and turn in a starting card. I mean, you gotta.
Yeah. Like, what are we doing?
You still need to actually have someone to do that. Yeah. I mean, this is as with all the stuff that's been said about them, this really does feel like the same old Lakers to me. And how does it end? I don't know. It ends with probably LeBron retiring there, and they go back to irrelevancy.
Look,
and this whole thing repeats.
I mean, I don't think this is gonna. I don't think it's gonna be a disaster. Like,
no, I don't think so.
To be fair, I don't think it's. I don't think JJ is gonna do a worse job than Darvin Ham. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're gonna be probably in contention for the play-in game, and then like maybe win a game in a series against like the Nuggets.
Maybe they'll win another in-season tournament. I mean,
because they're going to be the only ones that care about it.
Yeah, that's one they can win. It's like, they also lowest risk move for JJ Redick ever, actually. Like, it's like if it goes crashes and burns, well, then you're the fall guy, you're out of there, and then you're back on your podcast literally the next day to talk about it, and probably have your best show you've had numbers wise in a long time because of it.
he's the basketball Jeff Saturday. Like, what are we doing?
Right. I mean, it's almost not fair to those guys. I don't blame you for taking the job, but it's almost not fair to you for being in the situation to not have this success.
Well, like you said, I don't think anybody else wants the job. Like,
I don't.
Nobody wants to basically be backup coach behind LeBron.
No.
And I mean, it's probably a really awful work environment.
Who wants the Lakers job with Kobe in 15? What's the best thing we got going for us? Kobe's retirement eventually.
I mean, what was it, Luke Walton at the time?
Yes. Like, I don't know. Oh yeah. It's like it's like repeat 10 years later. So yeah, that's all I got to say on that. I'm not knocking anyone. I don't think you are either. It's more or less just so much of my reaction and sensible reaction of when I finally get to talk to you about it on this show is like, well, of course this is what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be surprised. And we also, it makes sense when you actually look at it from a prism of why everyone made the decision they made. To touch on one more thing, I'll say just about Bronny James, since that is now official. I will say that this is really no different than any other nepotism in any other league. It's just that it's happening, obviously, with LeBron. I actually see this slightly different way. I think it would be far worse and worse received by the league in total if LeBron James Jr. was instead like really, really, really good. Like, maybe not LeBron level, because I mean his dad's on like the Mount Rushmore of the sport, right? I'm not talking about that. Mm-hmm. I'm saying like if Bronny was actually like incredible and he was a projected first round pick and like he was one of the top 5, 6, 7 players in college basketball this last year after like a one and done year, I think this would look way worse because it's like not only did he pulled the cards to get the Lakers and it's like, well, wait, he's already really good and they already have LeBron. It would look more unfair, you know? The fact that he's probably going to be a G League guy, it's like, well, okay,
yeah,
fine, you know?
like
Whatever.
now the storyline, because of the context of what he is as a prospect,
Right.
it's more looking like LeBron's forcing him to be in a league that he shouldn't be in and he's not ready for.
Right.
Like that's the thing, is it's like
But he's not
he
forcing him. If you look
I
at it from his
which
perspective,
here's the thing.
his dad's not going to play forever.
To
So
be perfectly fair to Bronny, he like it's really hard to tell for sure, because he looked on that trajectory in like high school and when he was at the All-American games and stuff. He looked on the trajectory, and then he had a heart attack, and then he
yeah,
wasn't quite the same player
that's true.
in college.
He's had his
And
issues.
then so it's really hard to tell if like that was sort of a fluke or if that's who he was.
Mm.
Like I don't know if I so there I
We
mean
don't know. We don't know.
Rich Paul was apparently calling all these teams saying, don't draft Bronny because the Lakers are taking him. So if you take him, he's going to play in Australia.
Right.
Like, so they were engineering this whole thing.
They were.
Who's to say that he wasn't tanking his play in college to fall to the second round so that he could go to the Lakers? It's
true.
called a conspiracy. Who knows?
Oh no.
I'm just saying that there's a universe where he's not a bad like bench player.
That's true.
And he actually can contribute. Like, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. We'll see what he looks like.
Indeed.
I'm assuming he'll be playing in the summer league, so we'll see what he looks like then. But it either way, it's just absolutely insane that LeBron's still playing long enough to be with his son.
It is. That needs to be acknowledged. That is, yeah, and at a high level. Like he's still him, you know? So yeah, so that's what we got. Is it time to shift to potentially more controversy here in our back end of the show?
Yeah, let's get into it.
We're going to our pop culture half. We are going to talk just full spoilers about the Acolyte. There's 5 episodes now, and I actually watched the 5th one this morning, Casen. I was just about caught up. I was like, I got to catch up and get this going before. And so a lot of it is fresh on my mind, including where the story sits right now.
Current Star Wars series. Spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning, because we're not going to go episode by episode.
Yeah.
They're also pretty short episodes.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is going to be what, an 8 episodes?
I think it's 8. Yeah. There's like 8 episodes. There's, I think 5 was like 35 minutes long. Like,
right. Like
they're
by
not
the time it's
long.
said and done, there's not a lot of content here.
Yeah.
That's my first bit of criticism here, to be honest. This feels like a June on Disney Plus show in that we need someone on there watching. Like, this feels like this year's Secret Invasion. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
In the sense of a lot of the things being said about this show is far more polarizing. I'm not saying, but like most people are like, it's not really fantastic.
So sort of disclaimer for the audience.
Yeah.
We already talked about this like a couple days ago, and we were like, we can't keep talking about this.
Yeah, we can't. We imagine us talking about it uncensored, essentially.
Yeah. So we were on the phone the other day and we were like, why are we talking this much about it? We got to get on the show.
So there's plenty of that about it. I didn't still say to you, and I wasn't fully caught up yet either. So rather than reference our past conversation, I want to bring more conversation for the viewers and listeners now and say that my first of all, I'm not going to do a whole lot of setup here. It's a Jedi versus Sith kind of story that takes place 100 years before the Republic, or excuse me, about 100 years before Phantom Menace. It takes place like 100 years prior. The Old Republic's around.
The High Republic is
the High Republic. The Jedi are out doing their thing. Like there's a bunch of Jedi. Like it's before any of that stuff. It's from the sound of things, Sith are pretty rare. And that's kind of what this is about. This seems to be like kind of an emerging type Sith situation.
At the time, like no one alive is aware of any Sith. They've been rumors and stories amongst the Jedi because no one's ever encountered one.
Right. A self-proclaimed one, right?
Yeah.
And right off the bat, I will say that there's a lot of stuff that's happened. It revolves around the story between these a pair of twins. There's a flashback episode. It's like, are they children of the Force? Are they not? I will say this: I'm assuming that you've watched up to it, or at least have an idea enough of what we are talking about, so that you don't care about spoilers as much. Um, Let me talk about the series as a whole first. The writing is not good in this show. And it has not improved. And when I say the writing, I don't necessarily mean in terms of plot structure, although it's a very predictable show as well. Like, I can see the next thing that's about to happen, and it just feels like everything's happening for plot's sake. And I can get into that a little bit later if you want, Casen. But the dialogue is just flat out not good. Like, I don't know why. My favorite character in the show so far has been Soul, and I believe that actor learned English for this role, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And which is awesome. The
He
commitment of
was
the
he was the guy from Squid Game.
Oh, cool. Okay, that
Yeah,
makes sense. I didn't know that. Because I didn't watch
yeah.
Squid Game.
And so yeah, and he learned English for this.
That's amazing. So that being said, he's been genuinely really cool. I will say that there's always been shades of gray, at least in Star Wars, which is why the stuff of how the Jedi are hasn't really bothered me ever since Disney's really taken over, because I've always thought, well, like when the Jedi didn't exist in the original trilogy, the one source, they were supposed to be heroes, right? Sort of like the way I talked about the Brotherhood of Steel on the Fallout show. Yeah, in some context, they're heroes, but a lot of the time, I really find myself disagreeing with their way of life. And if you really think about them, they're a very flawed group. Uh, you know, that's the one little thing I like about The Last Jedi, when Luke goes on that like little rant where he's like, yeah, at the height of their power, they let they fell and let someone in, and they got completely wrecked, basically.
Which to me, that I think is the beauty of the story of Star Wars,
Mm,
because it's such a it's a deep narrative of the good guys becoming so bureaucratic and so obsessed with themselves that they kind of lose sight of what their purpose is. Like they become so ingrained with working with the Senate and working basically as an arm of the government
right.
that they completely lose sight of who they are, to the point where the bad guys start making sense over, like, you're not, like, what are you doing? Like
You're
you
not like
are,
like
like, this
what's
is
right
not
from
what you
wrong.
stand for. Yeah.
Like this isn't correct. And let's get into like the episode that was said that was really going to kind of blow the doors off was episode 3. In episode 3, it is established that it's the flashback episode that the two characters in question, who are Osha and May, I believe, is the other one,
Yeah, man. Mm.
a pair of twins. It is established essentially they come from another coven of witches, because Star Wars just all has to have that now. That use the Force, but they call it the Thread, which I thought
They're not, yeah, they're not Night Sisters, but
they're not Night Sisters, but
they're kind of like dark side adjacent witches.
yes, they
So
are.
they're not, which I don't, yeah, I agree is kind of weird, because that's what the Night Sisters are. So I don't understand
Right. I'm like,
like
okay,
who these people are.
this would almost be more interesting if they were just Night Sisters. But anyway,
Yeah, that would make more sense. Mm.
whatever. And essentially the Jedi come in to essentially take these children from them, who it's established are the first children in like a generation or something for these witches. And essentially they they they're force sensitive, and it's established essentially that they were at least as of us right now with where the show sits, they were created via the Force, which, if you're not aware, the only person who comes from the Force is Anakin Skywalker, who is the most pivotal character in the Skywalker saga. Literally,
Mhm.
everything starts and ends with him. And so it's that I could see. I immediately saw, okay, well, that's going to make a lot of the diehards really mad, and I could see that, like, we're saying that they are on that level of like a creation thing, which is why I don't think that's
Well,
really going to stick.
to
But
me,
these two kids are
to
force sensitive, is essentially what I'm trying to say.
to me, I think it explains it. Like it, I agree that, that probably some people are like, oh, so now you're saying like, now you're saying Osha's like Anakin Skywalker. No, I mean, to me, this explains where he came from.
Yeah,
That, like, it sort of explains that this is a thing that happens in the deep dark corners of the universe with these like dark side force users, that they have this ability. and
To create
there's
life from the Force.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
I as a Star Wars fan, I appreciate when you like the lore and like when you get into the weird, deep, dark, like expansions of like where the Force is coming from. Like at the end of at the end of Ahsoka when Balin is like trying to find whatever is in that temple
Oh
and
yeah.
like is trying to uncover the secrets of the Force. Like when
The
you
the coolest
expand
part of that show, yes.
yeah, yeah. When
For
you
me,
expand the lore of the Force and like where stuff comes from, I find it interesting. I mean,
I do too.
I'm sure people disagree with me on maybe on what it means and where it's coming from, but to me, you show me where the ability to make children with the Force comes from,
Yeah.
and that explains where this kid
How that
a
happened
hundred and so years later came
later.
from.
Well, right. And it's heavily implied that it was Plagueis the Wise who did that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not confirmed, but like
And so
Plagueis
to
the Wise,
me,
who was Sidious's master at one
yeah.
point, a dark side user. So it's like, so do dark side users, can they just do this? Like
So well,
that is interesting. I agree.
exactly. So to me, is
Yeah.
this coven connected with Plagueis the Wise? Like where is is it? So anyway,
There's a
yeah.
natural inch. I'm with you there. I that's why I didn't really have a huge issue with the
Because I
Anakin
want
thing
to
ever.
see. I would I would kill for a Plagueis like project. Like
Oh man.
dude, could you imagine like seeing like the storyline and narrative of Plagueis and a young Palpatine like
That there's something there brewing big time, dude. That's in terms of an idea, that's an amazing idea. I don't say that lightly. Yes, I'd love that. I would love if they explored that. I don't know. Again, I feel like I wouldn't want anyone but Filoni doing that.
right.
It's like,
I
because
mean,
it's like
there's a lot of stuff that you
I
probably
can see
want
that also
like
being ruined by this group.
right,
So
exactly. Like there's a lot of stuff you probably don't want to see touched because it
yeah,
could ruin, but that storyline and the whole narrative of like Plagueis and how Sidious became Sidious is an interesting storyline
maybe show
that I
Plagueis on
think
his own for the longest time, and then like
yeah,
Sidious comes in season like 3 or something, and it's
yeah.
like, oh, from here is where we get. And something about a dark side user would be cool as well, because it's like we've seen Plagueis maybe go up and down in terms of his journey, but then someone who's actually really evil comes in, and it's
Well,
like, yeah.
backing up,
Anyway,
the in episode 5 we have
yeah,
the big reveal of the dark side user, which that's the thing is he doesn't call him
guy with red saber and helmet on. I can just tell like
he doesn't
that's on.
call himself a Sith.
He doesn't.
Like he like that is essentially like vague dark side user. Like it's not really he's like you call me Sith, but like I don't identify.
Yeah, he says you're Jedi, and it's revealed that the guy with the helmet on is the spice guy from earlier, which again, totally foreshadowed. I'm like,
Yeah,
who? It's got to be
which
someone we've already met. He's the only one that we've seen working with. It's got to be that guy,
I
right?
Dollar
So
Tree Ezra Miller.
yeah, yeah, the actor. He looks kind of like Ezra Miller. I thought he was at first. I'm like, well,
I did too. I
I
was
was
like,
like,
is
wait,
that
that does.
Ezra Miller?
I'm like, wait, that doesn't make any sense, because this is one heck of a move by Disney. No, it's not him. I literally kind of all of that entered my line of thinking and exited within probably a
Yeah,
5 second like period of
yeah,
time. When I watched that this morning, I'm like, wait a minute, no, wait, no, that's not him. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I would be like,
yeah.
this.
Let,
I would have definitely heard about this already if this.
yeah, you had Dollar Tree Ezra Miller playing Dollar Tree Kylo Ren,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, and who was already Dollar Tree Vader, right?
yeah,
But okay, so but yeah, okay, in the round table for these shows and they're doing the storyboard, it's like, okay, our bad guy has to wear a helmet and he has to have a red lightsaber and he has to speak in poems, because that's how this works. That's how a Star Wars Sith user or Sith user, dark side user needs to be, which he checks every box in those scenes.
I don't get yeah.
He's also inexplicably insanely powerful, because we need that
All of
too.
these dudes are the same.
They're the
Like
same.
they're all so
They're all
like
just worse versions of Darth Vader. That's
like,
all it
you
is.
don't understand me.
Wait, I'm sorry. Well, that's the other thing too. It's like, okay, so Sith even 100 years ago were wearing helmets, huh? For no reason. Okay, is it just for the
So
big reveal in the plot? Yes, that is what it is. You know,
Yeah, there was literally no reason for
there's
that.
no.
Although,
He does say
although
so that you can read my thoughts. So I'm like,
it's
are they doing like a
the
Professor X
implication
thing?
though,
Yeah,
the implication though is I think that he didn't want to know, or he didn't want May to know who he was.
or
And
Soul.
it no, he was wearing the helmet because he didn't want May to know who he was.
Well, no. He
So that
said there's a moment I watched just this morning. There's a moment when he says to Soul, he's like, take your helmet off. He's like, why? So you can read my thoughts. And I thought,
well
okay,
that
so
too.
I'm like, okay, so maybe the helmet is sort of like the helmet. The reason Magneto wears a helmet so that
Right.
Charles can't get to him. You know,
Right,
the
right. But
X
he
Men.
also says something
Yeah,
about like what but Soul is like, well, what kind of master doesn't show his face to his apprentice or
to his
something?
pupil. I got
Yeah.
it
And then so it seems like to me though that he was purposely hiding his face
because
from May
obviously because he was
so
already
that he
hiding his
could
identity. That makes sense.
so that he
Yeah,
could pretend to be May's friend. And
yeah.
that like but anyway.
Anyway, my thing about that is I for the structure of the episode 5 was awful, by the way. Let's just have them all run in different directions and then, oh, we're running this way,
I
let's run
didn't
that way,
none
run
of it
this
made
way
any
again,
sense.
fly a lightsaber in,
However,
then just bring them all back together. And oh, by the way, Braggle's out there, the little rat thing is running around for no reason. I'm like, these Jedi are horrible at planning, like plan and executing it. Like this, like what's the plan here? What is even the
well,
goal anymore?
I don't know if maybe that was the point. Like they've
Yeah.
never encountered a Sith before. They don't know how to fight one. Like
Uh,
there's like I what we saw was we learned that the guy who's like friends with Hosha, um he had like an orange lightsaber, which is supposed to be like a
they're Jedi. It's interpreted that they are Jedi that use the dark side, but responsibly, essentially. Like so,
yeah.
like when they put the kyber crystal in, it bled a little bit, but not fully. Because Balin had the same one; he had an orange one.
Okay, okay.
It's interpreted that they're a dark side user essentially, but not to the point where they're Sith. You know.
Okay, interesting.
Whereas
But yeah,
gold lightsabers, of which we've seen a lot of these, gold lightsabers are like the High Republic Jedi, a little higher ranking. We saw multiple though with this. Like you're more of a
then
scribe
yeah,
because
that's what I was talking. Yeah.
the one guy who went out had a scribe one, and then Souls is blue, and
Yeah.
little kid I forget her name. Hers was green, and they're usually
Yeah.
scholars. So
But
the colors do
anyway,
mean something in Star
yeah.
Wars. They do.
Yeah. I will say that the events made no sense. However, the lightsaber battles in episode 5 were actually pretty sick.
They were
Like
pretty cool.
they were pretty cool. Like the scene with the Padawan girl where she had the two lightsabers and she was like actually getting the better of
Sith man.
Chimere for most of it.
Yep.
Like it was really cool to see.
No, yeah,
And then
and then he splits, and then she
yeah.
runs up to him. He splits it, and then bam, 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 and then again, Disney Star Wars critique of mine. I'm glad that so it must be that you must have to be stabbed with a lightsaber 3 times instead of once for that to actually kill you. If you
Yeah.
recall, I have a
Yeah.
serious issue with how deadly these weapons are not anymore. So much so that we're just going to use one as a flashlight the whole time. That's also happening. It's like,
Yeah.
those are pretty dangerous. You might want to put it away.
Also, I missed it when I watched this, but apparently I saw a clip of it like on Twitter. Apparently, like during the fight when he still had his helmet on, Chimere like headbutted a lightsaber and like shattered the hilt.
Oh yeah. And
So
it's
he
like, well,
just
wait.
like it's like what?
Yeah. Well, and the one other cool thing that he has is he's got like the lightsaber hookup to where it shorts out other ones,
Yeah.
which is a really cheap move, but it's a beautiful move. Like that's incredible if you're like you can just short out another lightsaber and it's like in that moment because the coolest thing for me that has happened in the show at all so far was the sequence where what did you call him? What's the villain's name?
His name's Chimere is what
Okay.
is what the guy's name was. I don't know if that's his actual name, but that's what the
right.
when he was in his
When Chimere and Soul were having essentially a forced fist fight, that was awesome. I was like, okay, this is really cool because they were really going at each other. Like it was
which yeah, I mean
I was like, I've never seen this before. This is
the fight choreography in the show has been pretty cool.
it
Like
has.
even the beginning scene when May kills the first Jedi,
Mhm.
and they're essentially having a fist fight. Like
That's the most
the
unrealistic. That's the most unbelievable death of the entire show, by the way.
yeah,
So far,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, wait, this seasoned Jedi Master is against this kid who was fighting without a lightsaber, and she goes down within like a minute or two. It's like, okay. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
It's just cool to see like them have Jedi use just fight.
Yeah,
Like
when you do like when you don't have a lightsaber, what does that look like? It's sort of like how a lot of people didn't like it in the prequels when George made the decision for Yoda to actually fight with a lightsaber, because up to then he only fought with the Force. And it's like, well, yeah, Yoda's so good with the Force, he doesn't really need a lightsaber. Like, you need it for defense, but even in that Dooku moment, it's a little bit weird, but he strikes the lightsaber first, Dooku does, and it's like, okay, fine, if you want to fight with a lightsaber, I can, but Yoda can just fight you with the Force. You know what I mean? So to see users do that in another form, but like, I just felt like that was really, like, I could feel those impacts. I was like, man, these two are really going at each other. Um, and then Saul actually wins, which was great, and then he gets sneak attacked by May at the end, and it's like, okay, well, all right. I don't really know where this goes, because at the end of episode 5, essentially, May and Osha finally see each other first time as kids. It's clear that they have very differing ideologies and very different memories about what happened, because apparently their people were taken out by a fire that May started. That was done incredibly vaguely in that episode 3. I could tell they did that on purpose, because you're not supposed to know what happened. It's like, how did this little book start a fire that killed everybody? Like, that took out an entire race.
well, I interpreted that as like a spell book that like she used her witch
uh,
powers to start a fire. Like it
it
literally
wasn't.
she go literally so essentially the Jedi show up in episode 3 to take Osha because Osha wants to be a Jedi.
They were there to
And
take
then
both kids, which right then and
yeah,
there, decision by the Jedi. I'm like, I understand why the Jedi are here. I am not cool with them doing this. Like,
yeah,
because this is what you're talking about. They are overextending their reach here. Could they be potentially dangerous Force users? Yes, but you can't just abduct kids. You can't, like,
right.
you can't just do that. Like, no one's gonna be okay
Yeah.
with that, you know?
And so Osha wants to go with them,
Mm-hmm.
and May's like, "No, I'm not going to let you. I'm going to kill you."
Yeah,
And then she locks her in the room, and then she grabs a spell book, and then she like casts a spell to start a fire,
that was a
and then she
prequel.
burns
That
the
was a
whole place
prequel
down.
level moment, man. That was a
Yeah.
prequel level piece of dialogue. That I even sent you a Snapchat and a few other people. That made me laugh for 5 solid minutes. That was awesome. In like in that was awesome in a way like the movie The Room is awesome. So it's like, you can't believe someone looked at that and thought, yeah, that works. It's like the line in
Yeah.
Ahsoka where it's like the line in Ahsoka where the droid's like, don't worry, we can trust kid. He has abilities. His father was a Jedi. And the pilot's like me, like saying, okay, like literally throws his hands in the air and says, okay, I'll just follow orders here. Cause if that's really what we're going with, that is one of those scenes. That's one of those Disney
Yeah.
Star Wars classic moments right there. I think I also interpreted it to you. There's an amazing line in the movie Dark Phoenix. Um, I compared it to that. I can't say what it is, but yeah, I compared it to that. Something that Cyclops does. Anyway, um, I've harped on the things that I think are not so great. I'm not going to rate it, even if we go episode by
Well,
episode, because
anyway, so
we'll
but
rate the series at the end.
at
Go
the
ahead.
end of episode 5,
They trade places.
the big thing is that like is that May knocks out Osha and then cuts her hair off to look like her, and then she goes with Soul, and then Osha's stuck with Kymir, and so we'll see how that goes because I don't know how that is
I don't really
gonna.
know. Well, at this point, I don't know what anyone's motivation is. I have no idea I have no idea what anyone's goal is, other than Soul, who's just like, let's just get back. And it's saying, because I got to, if you're Soul, you're like, I have to find some way to explain this utter disaster that just took place in his
Yeah,
perspective, utter completely. They didn't get May. They lost 2 Jedi. They encountered a new Sith who basically
well,
knocked them around.
I would imagine that May's motivation would be to like blow up the Jedi Temple.
Right. Like
And
something
but
that, like that. Yeah.
right, right. And
Exterminate the
so
Jedi who exterminated her family. Yeah.
yeah, so like my thought is that May is that like Osha knows she's not May. And so she's gonna be stuck with Kymir and she's gonna be like, I need to get out of here and like
Yeah,
try and quickly leave.
but it's also sort of like, let's just be real here. I interpret flat out Osha to be better with the Force ultimately than May is. That or they're equal, and one's just a dark side user, one isn't. But like Osha's had actual lightsaber training. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a potential here. The biggest thing that could happen now at this point is if they somehow did another switch around here and Osha turns into the evil one. I don't think anything like that's going to happen, but I'm lost as to where everyone else's motivation is, other than the only character, like I said, that I really like in this show so far, Soul. So, um, I don't know. I think this speaks to a bigger issue that I did say the other time, that I did say in one of our previous conversations, that I knew I wanted to say on today's cast, and that is, Casen, you and I could handpick an era and write any kind of Star Wars story we possibly could put together. You and I together, we could collaborate, and the two of us could do could do a movie and or show that in our eyes is perfect, or as close to perfect as we can, has all the beautiful elements in there of all of these things. Whether we were telling a Sith Jedi story, whether we were telling a story like Andor about the normal folks, whether we were telling a completely separate story or like a smuggler story or whatever, and probably 80% of Star Wars fans would absolutely rip it to shreds, and not like it. Find everything wrong with it. Absolutely beat it up to the point where it's just set the internet ablaze of how terrible everyone thinks it is. Because that, I feel, is happening to this show a little bit. However, there is a lot here that's not good. There's a lot here that feels very CW-ish, and it feels very much like we finally get something set during like the Republic or High Republic era, and we get this. So this show, I don't know how they stick the landing here, because they've done a lot of good here, but in my opinion, they've done a lot of just kind of generic stuff, and it just feels like Star Wars content for content's sake. And I don't know. I don't know what kind of big swings they're looking to take here. I also am not really sure if this show gets a second season. That's the other thing. So hard to say. Hard to say, but that's just a reality. This is not probably, this is the most polarizing franchise of all time. So that's thoughts on that, my man.
Yeah,
Because you're a
no,
bigger
I
fan
mean,
of this franchise than I am.
I definitely agree. I mean, it's a polarizing franchise, because the fan base is definitely relatively toxic and
I agree.
hates everything. Um,
And
so
expands all ages in that
yeah,
way. You got young people and old people, older folks, all guilty of that.
yeah,
So
and so it's also tough. I mean, like we talked about it too, where it's hard for Star Wars to put out content that the fan base wants or expects,
yeah,
because like with Marvel, they at least have comic books to take storylines from and characters from and stuff. Star Wars is just to make them up,
yeah,
and so you either like it or you don't. That's just how it
yeah.
is. But
I agree.
um, I will
And
say,
really,
I
that's how the books were too. People always try to compare the extended lore. The books were the same way. Okay,
yeah.
if they tried to do some of those stories, it would be the same way. People would not like them. So some people would really hate them. So sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
But I the only other thing I'll say is my prediction is the Chekhov's gun that was planted in, I think it was episode 1 or something. OSHA has a tattoo. May doesn't know that. She's never seen it. And so I think there will come a time to where maybe like she takes off her jacket or something, and Soul sees that she doesn't have that May, who's pretending to be OSHA, doesn't have the tattoo. And so Soul's gonna figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that will be the
Oh wait, hang on.
the
Chekhov's
thing.
gun. You mean that not for the whole series? You think that is how that they're going to be figured out?
Yeah, yeah,
Gotcha. Soul's gonna
yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, I could see that.
yeah. Because
So,
they like that's my process anyway, is that like that's the reason that they randomly gave her this tattoo, that and brought it up, is to point out that she has
there's
this.
a difference right there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
is that's the difference in how you can tell the two apart.
and also they established that Osha's had what, like 5 or 6 years out of the Jedi now. Prior
Yeah,
to the start of the show, she left the Jedi. So
she I think it's insinuated she never finished, like she never finished
She
the
never
training.
completed the training. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever that is. Yeah. Which that's a phrase in a Jedi that's totally person to person, because how on earth did Anakin not complete his training? It's always one of the biggest. That's one of the biggest questions I have. No wonder he's mad. But anyway, yeah, well, that's solid.
Well, no, he didn't though. Didn't he?
Well,
Did
remember that was the
let
source. Remember that was the source of controversy. It's like the council wouldn't give him the rank of master, and it's
yeah.
like,
They're like you've completed your training,
yeah, oh
but
yeah,
you're
yeah,
not.
but you're
But
not a
you're not.
master yet.
Yeah.
How
And
am
he's
I
like,
not?
what? It's like, well, it's because you're a toddler. Like
Yeah,
what?
and it's like, well, there's still no good reason. Anyway, we're rehashing the prequels. Anyway, listen, I don't know what the Chekhov's gun is as far as where this is actually going. I keep thinking of like what's the biggest twist you could find here, and I guess the biggest twist, they've already done it. Like the biggest twist would be like the whole time it's actually the opposite twins. Like there's another flashback or something. Because spoiler alert, the movie Us does that. The Jordan Peele movie does something a little bit like that. That switch is a little bit more telegraphed in the beginning to where it's like, okay, you could kind of figure that out. Anyway, where a pair of twins like flips and then they show them as adults and it's like, oh, okay. I don't think that that's necessarily what they're going to do here. There is going to be some sort of reconciliation. There's got to be some sort of honestly, my Chekhov's gun is that we're going to find out there's something in Soul's past that involves this guy, this Sith user that put him on this path. And that's where his like dark side kind of came from. Because he's too powerful to have not had some sort of training,
Well,
you
the
know?
guy definitely seemed to insinuate that he had a personal vendetta against Soul for some reason.
That or Soul, he knows about Soul doing something bad in the past. And that's kind of that
Yeah,
or the
it's
other. Yeah.
insinuated that he has a connection to him.
Right.
So I'm curious what that is. Yeah, I mean, also, like, where did this guy come from? Like,
Right.
who is this
Yeah.
guy?
What's your deal? Yeah. So, and if you're this powerful, how did they not sense you when you were just right there with the spices?
Well,
Again,
exactly. Is that there's like 10 Jedi and nobody could like figure out that there was a
no,
dark side user
there's a
10 feet
Grand
away from
Jedi
you?
Master right here who's literally by a veil reveal, keeping his identity from May, and it's like, really, no one sensed how bad this. All right, fine, whatever. Switch off that ability as you want, Again, just plot structure, not great, but
Yeah.
so far. How am I on this series? I'm watching it because I have a podcast that I have to talk to you about stuff. Otherwise, I wouldn't be watching this. That's just me being real. I was like, I gotta watch
Fair.
this. I
Fair
have to
enough.
watch this. I felt a little bit that way at times about Ahsoka as well, and I'm on record saying that.
Look, and so I've been playing Jedi Survivor this weekend,
that is an
and
incredible game.
the storyline is already better than the show.
Yes, and that what's funny is the very little bit of storytelling that like Respawn has done in those two games, Jedi Fallen Order
Fallen Order.
and Survivor, which I think ups the ante in every single way, story, gameplay, difficulty. Like that is a much even more grounded Star Wars story set at a different time. Then I'm thinking to myself, Disney's letting this stuff happen in their games. I mean, let's get some of these folks involved even.
Well, I know I'm not super far into the story, but like I knew nothing about it as far as what the story was. And then when I found out that like there were like flashbacks to the High Republic and stuff, I was like, this is cool.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's cool.
And I can tell you it gets even cooler. I'm not going to spoil that story in any way. I will say that they expand on the lore in a very smart way in that game that again, most people have said this is good. This is really, really good. This is the direction you can go in. Um, and we can definitely
I
talk about that whenever you
I
finish a game.
want
Love
I
that game.
want him in a Disney Plus show.
Oh, Cal Kestis.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cal.
I mean,
If you don't know who Cal
they
Kestis
made the
is,
guy look like Cameron Monaghan, I think is his
mm-hmm.
name. They made the guy look like him, like
I
100% of the way.
I think we could see him at some point, live action. He does a great job. Cal Kestis out there, folks, is like if quote unquote, like imagine like a Han Solo type character in terms of attitude became a Jedi. Like he is rugged. He is
Yeah.
a good dude, but like no nonsense dude, but like is the kind of Jedi to be working for Saw Gerrera that
Yeah.
will do the things that the other person won't do. Like, he's a very cool character. Another product of Order 66 going awry, right? You know. So yeah, I just think that he's incredibly well written, and I was like, only thing I wouldn't want is for someone at Disney to write him differently, because he's written kind of perfectly in that game. So I wouldn't want them to change him so much,
However,
you know.
I only in a Filoni produced space to where he would know to use the source material of the game and say, this is what we're doing.
Right.
But
exactly. So I'm so glad you brought up Jedi Survivor and you're playing that game, by the way, because I can't. That game's incredible. That's one of my. That was probably my favorite video game I played in 2023. That was like that was like my personal game of the year.
I love Fallen Order, and I finally got around.
Too.
Oh yeah, I finally got around to getting it.
Overall, I say this. Overall, Jedi Survivor, better game than Spider-Man 2. And you know how excited I was for that. Better video game overall, that game. That's all we got, dude. This is one of our longer shows, but it had to be.
Yeah, it's been great to be back.
It has been great to be back. We appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I always have a great time talking to you about this stuff and hearing from people as well. Let us know about your stuff. I'm going to also wish a happy 4th of July out there, because that is going to come and go before our last show or next show. I have a couple of vacations coming up in July, Casen, of which we'll do our next show around. So it might still be another couple of weeks until our next one.
Yeah.
But as you recover, hopefully your voice will be fully back by our next show.
It's the summer, guys. There's nothing to talk about.
There's nothing to talk about sports wise, but also, Case, and I will say this: there's significantly less movie content normally than we would talk about.
Which anticipated with a lot of the strike stuff.
Yep.
But we
had the strike to just talk about last year.
Yeah. We obviously are both very hyped for Deadpool Wolverine.
Yep.
That we will absolutely be talking about that.
That's going to be a behemoth. Also within a week of that, prior, you got college football, the video game dropping. We're going to talk about that because we've been talking about that, and we know people are excited for that. And with my vacations, I've already said to some folks with the deep dives. Yeah, I've already said to some folks, July 2024 could be one of the best months of my life personally because of those three things. Like between vacations and the dropping of those two pieces of content.
Yeah,
Deadpool, Wolverine, everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been great stuff.
So look, everybody, thank you for listening. Stay tuned. Obviously throughout the summer we'll probably have some irregular releases here, but we're not going anywhere.
We didn't end the show. I actually had someone. I had someone actually ask me if we stopped the show. I was like, no, we've just been busy.
I was just dead.
Yeah. Yeah, as I was earlier this year, and I finally brought that up to Case, and I was like, dude, someone asked me if we ended the show. We need to do something, and that was when you had less of a voice even now. So, but it's good to be back, and we'll absolutely will be here to talk about the things we've been talking about like normal very soon. So, this is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And we'll see you as always at the next stop. Sorry, awkward pause there. My mic. Of course, that happens literally at the 0 hour. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.